Hi guys, it's Aoife from Fred VC Died Laughing, and I'm here with my weekly wrap up. So I got 4 books read this week and I'm going to tell you about them now. And the first book I briefly talked about last week, which was The Dark Day's Deceit by Alison Goodman. I think I talked about this last week anyway. And this is the third book in the trilogy, the Dark Days Club trilogy. So this is the third and final book. And this follows a woman called Lady Helen as she learns that she is something called a receiver, which means that she is able to basically aid the world in its fight against these like demon-like creatures, and she is a special type of human where she's able to see and fight these creatures and take their energy into herself to basically get rid of them and save the humans around her. And normally this is a man's job, so obviously she has to go into this kind of training to try and learn how to be one of these, while all at the same time trying to still be a proper lady of society, someone who's quite, she is quite high born, she has a lot of good connections, she is hoping for a good marriage, she has a lot of chemistry with her with the person who's training her, Lord Carlston, but he has a little bit of a scandal himself, so she isn't really supposed to be seen around him, but obviously she can't help so, and there's like all these different kind of intriguing things happening along with her training, her personal life, her family life, and yeah, she's just basically just trying to keep it all together and still, have a good future for herself, and it's quite hard. I really enjoyed this. I just think this story is just so rich in detail. The characters just really come alive on the page. I think the character development with all of the characters in this were really good. We not only saw Lady Helen have this really great character development, and a really great development as herself as a woman as well, and the confidence that she the confidence she has and the belief in herself and her training and what she can do. And then she also has a handmaid called Darby, who is kind of ends up becoming something called her Tureen, which is kind of like the kind of bodyguard to Helen, and she also has this really great kind of storyline herself, and this lovely relationship, this romantic relationship that she has for herself, and that she has to kind of face a lot of challenges to to be in and to stand up for herself. And yeah, so there's a lot of just really great female characters in this that are all very strong and opinionated, and I just really loved all of them, and I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars because I just really enjoyed how it all ended up. The final kind of big battle in this was just so intense, and there was just a lot of violence and gore and things that kind of made me squirm a bit, but in like a really good way. I really enjoyed seeing all that action really come together and really see the powers kind of really come alive on the page as well that we've been hearing about, and yeah, it was really satisfactory. So I really liked this, so 4.5 out of 5 stars. After this, I read The Bride Test by Helen Hoang, which is the second book in the Kiss Quotient series. And this one follows a woman called Esme, who is basically kind of employed by this man's mother to come from Vietnam to America to kind of date him and hopefully marry him by the end of the summer. They're kind of given this timeline, and the man Kai is he's autistic, and his mum just kind of is really worried about him, thinks that he's never going to be able to find someone, and she ends up kind of interviewing all these women in Vietnam, and she ends up accidentally interviewing Esme, who was the cleaner in the hotel that she was interviewing these girls at, and she ends up figuring out that Esme, the type of character Esme is, she would be a really good fit for Kai. So Esme ends up just agreeing to this. She leaves her young daughter and her mother and her grandmother in Vietnam while she goes to America. She doesn't tell anyone that she has a daughter, so she has this really big secret that she's keeping for herself from everyone. Moving in with Kai, and the two of them kind of, they clash at first, but eventually you kind of see how they do kind of suit each other, and this lovely little relationship kind of, really built up between them, and this romance, and there are some like sexy times as well, and it is a really cute book. This one didn't have the same type of draw for me the way the Kiss Quotient did. I think the relationship is a little bit slightly on the weirder side, where it seems like the two of them are kind of disadvantaged in ways, or maybe not disadvantage is probably the wrong word, but they're kind of both. Obviously Kai is, he is autistic, he sees the world a different way, and it would probably be very easy for someone to take advantage of him. And then with Esme, she is obviously someone who's in America on a tourist visa, and she would really like a green card, and marrying Kai would probably be a really great way for her to do this. But at the same time, she is someone who through her need could also be taken advantage of, and there's just this kind of really weird balance that's constantly seems to be in the novel, and I wasn't really sure sometimes how I felt about that. And it did seem that there were a lot of things that were like really easy for Esme as well, which I couldn't really understand, because like obviously for me, just hearing from the outside, not living in America, and hearing from the outside, I always find that it seems that it's very hard to really kind of, visas and stuff are a massive thing over there, and there is a lot of paperwork involved, even with just a tourist visa, and I don't know, it just kind of seemed easy for her, and she didn't seem to be challenged in any way, even when she was like going through like the airport and stuff. And I just felt like maybe she probably would have come up against some more barriers, even just to, you know, explain herself more when she was going through the airport or something. I don't really know, like there was just some of these things in the way she was talking about, like maybe going to college in the future and getting grants and stuff like this. I was just like this is really big thinking for someone who, you know, realistically as an immigrant, you are going to come up like there's so many barriers you are faced with, and I just felt like it wasn't as explored maybe as it could have been in the book. It seemed like there were so many things that like should have been like really big deals in this book as well, and they just like weren't. Like as I said, like Esme is keeping this really big secret from everyone, and it kind of did feel like, you know, I feel like that should have come up earlier in the book than it did. It kind of came up too late, and then it was just like everything was just like in such a happy little bow. I was a little bit like this isn't really that realistic. So yeah, there were just some things in this book that like I did really enjoy the romance. It was very cute. I really did like Kai, and Esme seemed really, really nice as well. And yeah, but there were just these things that just kind of were like, I was a bit like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know if I can really believe this. There was like a believability factor in it as well, I guess. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy seeing the characters that we previously had met briefly in the Kiss Quotient, and obviously Michael and Stella do have a little bit of a cameo in this one as well, which I really enjoyed. But I think I'm most looking forward to going on to whatever Guan's book is going to be called, because I love Guan. He's probably one of my favourite side characters in the series, so I'm really, really excited to see the next book, which I think is going to be focused on him. So I'm very excited for that. So I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars, or 3. I think it was a 3 out of 5 stars. If it was a 3.5 5 stars, I might drop it down to a 3 out of 5 stars, because it really was just a 3. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't anything amazing for me, and I did have some, you know, issues with it. The next book I picked up was a high fantasy book, and that was The Bloodprint by Ausma Zehanat Khan. This is kind of a hard one to explain, to be honest. This is set in this kind of, I would say it's like a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy world, and we are following this woman called Arian, and she is something called a companion, and she has this magical power where when she speaks these words from this special manuscript or something, it's kind of like the words are given power, and she's kind of able to do these kind of magical things with these words. And in this world there is this really evil kind of I don't know whether it's like a group or particular type of countrymen called the Talisman, and they basically don't believe, they burn books, they burn manuscripts, they don't believe in the written word, and people aren't allowed to, like, you know, read or write or anything like that, which makes Arian's power all the more special. They are very, very anti-women, this Talisman people. They basically, if they see a woman on her own or in a vulnerable state, they will take her and put her into a slave chain, and she's basically sent off somewhere, and no one really knows where these women go, but they do know they will eventually lead like terrible lives. And Arian ends up on this kind of quest to find this something called the Bloodprint, which is like this really, really, really special type of manuscript, like I think one of the, like the most powerful one, and whatever, she believes that it should be able to kind of vanquish maybe the Talisman and the one-eyed preacher who basically leads the Talisman. It's something that they can use to fight against him. So she goes on this kind of quest to find this, and she has some companions along the way. There is a man that she knows from her past who she has a bit of a romantic link with that ends up joining them, and the story, that's basically what the story's about. This one, I don't know, it was one of those ones where I went into it, and then by the second chapter I was like looking at it, and I was looking at it on Goodreads, and I was like, is this the second book? Like I got really confused, because it definitely felt like, even within the first couple of chapters, I felt so behind already. I felt like the way the way everything was going, even the storyline, the characters, the way everything was being introduced, it kind of felt as if we should already know who everyone was and what everyone was doing and why they were there, and I didn't feel like I got enough information quickly enough to really be able to establish a proper world and a proper story for the characters in my head, the way, you know, you normally do with books. Like, you know, I'm not saying to give me every single thing within the first few pages, but I should have a decent amount of knowledge where I feel like I know what's going on, not that I feel like I might be missing an entire book. that's how I felt, and it didn't really clear things up for the entirety of the book. It definitely felt like I wasn't given enough information about the companions of Hera, who they were, how they started. You know, we do eventually find out how Arian got to them, but I still think the things around the talisman and how they came to power, how Arian ended up the companion of Hera, I feel like we needed a lot more information about that, and we weren't given it. And I feel like it really let the story down. And then Arian is one of these characters where she is very interesting. There's part of her that you're like, is she too good to be true? She's one of these women who literally every single man that meets her is like obsessed with her, and she's like so beautiful, and like she's so powerful, and oh, she's so amazing, and you know, and like it's like, yes, okay, like I can believe that she's a very beautiful woman, but like every single man really, like, you know, come on. Especially when she has a companion with her who is also a woman and is also supposed to be this really striking, beautiful looking woman, and everyone just like kind of glances off her and is focused on Arian, and it's just like, okay, you can give the other character maybe a little bit of a romance. And something happens to the other character, her name was Cinia. Something happens to her near the end of the book, and it kind of felt like no one cared and she was kind of forgotten about. And it was so weird, because like she seemed like, at the start of the book, she seemed like she was going to be this really important character, and she was this really important character, but then the man came along who was the romance, and then it seemed like he completely interceded and he was more important, and this female character got on the back seat, and like no one really cared about her anymore. And it was really odd. I just found it really, really odd that the reactions when something did happen to her, and you know, there wasn't really like much done. Like obviously I'd say in the second book there will be, but I don't know, it kind of felt like no one really cared about her, and I was like, but like what about her, like what about Cinia? And yeah, I don't know, like it was weird. And I will say the end of this book kind of, you know, it got better for me near the end, but at the very end, and I do kind of, because of the way things ended, I do kind of want to pick up the second book, even though this one didn't end up being very good for me. I do wonder if maybe going into the second book, having the information I have from this book, will I enjoy it better? And things do kind of, there were things that did happen at the end of the book where I was like, ooh, okay. So I don't know, I'll see if I just come across in the library, I'll pick it up probably. But this was a 2.5 out of 5 stars for me in the end. It just, yeah, I just did have some issues with it. I feel like it could have been something great, but I just feel like the lack of information that we were given did let me down a bit. And the last book I finished this week was an audiobook, and it was The Near Witch by VE Schwab. This was her like YA book that, I don't know whether like it went out of print or something and was recently brought back into print, but I listened to this on audiobook on my library app, and it is basically about this place called Near, where there are no strangers ever, and then one day this stranger comes along. He's a teenage boy, and he kind of catches the eye of this girl called Lexi, who, you know, she obviously noticed him because she's a stranger, but then that night children start going missing from their home, like in the middle of the night. It's like they've just wandered off, and because obviously this boy, who Lexi calls Cole, is a stranger, everyone kind of points the finger at him, and it's like, obviously he's done this, he's a witch. You know, and Lexi ends up kind of, you know, getting to know Cole. She gets to know more about him, and she knows that he isn't the one doing this to the children. There might be this legend around this witch that lived in this village years and years and years ago, and there's possibly some magic still around that is connecting her with the children that are going missing. So Lexi and Cole end up on this like kind of mission to figure out what is going on and to try and save the children of the village. This one was fine, like it wasn't anything special for me. I will say the audiobook, I feel like I maybe would have liked this better in physical form, because the narrator of the audiobook was so flat. Her name was Heather Wild, I think. Yeah, Heather Wild, and whatever way she spoke, it was like there was just nothing there. Like I don't know, I really didn't enjoy her narration. Her voice was really flat and like monotone, and when she did kind of accents and stuff, she was pretty good. When she did like some of the older characters with like older voices, there was a little bit more, but when she was just doing general narration, I really didn't like the tone of her voice, and it just made the story kind of a bit boring. And there wasn't anything like super duper exciting happening in the book either. There's like, it's just kind of like this kind of fairy tale-esque story, a little bit Grimsy like, a little bit Brothers Grimm like. So yeah, it was nothing really special, but it was fine. It was fine to listen to like while I walked to work a few times this week. But it's not something that I would be raving about, and it's probably not something that will stick in my mind for too long. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. That's everything I have read this week. Please let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys again next time.